socialist transformation of society, closely linked to the requirements of substantive equality. Redefining the fundamental conditions of the historically viable alternative mode of social metabolic reproduction in accordance with the principle of substantive equality is an essential part of the socialist strategy. For substantive equality is not just one of the many orienting principles of the socialist enterprise. It occupies a key position within the general categorical framework of labor's hegemonic alternative to the established societal reproductive order. For nearly all of the other vital orienting principles of socialist strategy can only acquire their full meaning in close conjunction with the requirement of substantive equality. Not in an absolute sense, of course, in that neither a structural primacy nor a historical antecedence could be asserted in favor of substantive equality as against the other important defining characteristics of socialist strategy, since we are concerned here with a set of dialectical interrelations and reciprocal determinations. Nevertheless, as we shall presently see, substantive equality occupies the position of primus inter pares in this complex relationship of dialectical reciprocity, which is not only compatible with but also required by the historically unfolding and reciprocally enriching dialectical correlation in question. The other categorical orienting principles are not less important or more negligible, but more specific and more context-bound than substantive equality. To put it in more explicit terms, they all have a fairly direct connection with substantive equality, but not necessarily with each other, except through their complicated indirect mediations among themselves. This is why substantive equality can and must occupy the position of primus inter pares in an overall complex of strategic development from which none of the others can be omitted, nor indeed could they be even temporarily neglected for the sake of convenience. Here are the principal classes in which the particular categories and orienting principles of the socialist strategic enterprise can be thematically related to each other, concerning in four classes I mention now. Class number one, the question of the established order's structurally insuperable antagonisms and the hegemonic alternative way of organizing social metabolic reproduction. Second, the operating principles required for the realization of the historically sustainable form of productive activity in the hegemonic alternative order, and the type of distribution in harmony with that kind of societal reproduction. Number three, the relationship between the categorical principles of negation vis-à-vis capital's ruling social metabolic order and the inherently positive articulation of the historic alternative. And number four, the categorical connection between the inherited dominant values of society together with the positive definition of the advocated alternatives, as well as the reassessment of the relationship between individual and social consciousness, including the thorny issue of false consciousness. In all four classes, the connection of the particular categories and orienting principles with substantive equality is very clear. Now I will go to all four of them in a little more detail. Number one of the most compelling reasons why labor's hegemonic alternative order is sustainable only on the basis of the institution and ongoing consolidation of substantive equality is because adversariality, endemic to the antagonistically divided and structurally entrenched capital system of domination and subordination, assuming particularly destructive forms in our time, that cannot be overcome in a lasting way without it. The formal devices of the societies, even with the longest and most broadly diffused democratic tradition, could achieve virtually nothing in this respect. On the contrary, in recent times, they moved in the opposite direction, with gravely authoritarian curtailment of even the most basic constitutional and civil liberties on a growing scale. Evidently, the relationship not only between humanity and nature, but also between states and nations, as well as among the particular individuals, must be mediated in all conceivable forms of society. Perilously for the future of humankind, the capital system is incapable of operating in any other way than through the imposition, whenever needed, by the most violent means, including potentially catastrophic world wars, of antagonistic forms or modalities of mediation, through the hierarchical discriminatory class structure and through the free force exercised by the capitalist state. Only on the basis of substantive equality is it possible to envisage the necessary non-antagonistic forms of mediation among human beings at all levels in a historically sustainable way. It is also important to press in this context that what is at stake is not a question of abstract social determinations capable of being imposed from above in the manner of the inherent forms of authoritarian decision-making typical of capital's mode of social metabolic control. Since the decisions taken directly affect the life of every particular individual, non-antagonistic mediation through their active participation in the vital material, productive, political and cultural domain is conceivable only on a non-fictitiously tacit, vacuous, formal or arbitrarily manufactured but meaningfully consensual basis. And that again underlines the relevance of substantive equality. Now the second point. The historic challenge concerning the established mode of production and societal reproduction is clearly manifest in our time in relation to some major issues. In none of them could the underlying problems be conceptualized in generic social terms, because they cannot be abstracted from the particular social individuals with their qualitative needs and motivations, calling for appropriate solutions in the same sense. Since going into the details on these matters would take far too long, in the present context it is only possible to briefly